5 fruits that restore vision. Naturally, your retina repairs itself. While you sleep, the profound connection between what we consume and the long-term health of our vision is often overlooked, yet it is a fundamental aspect of maintaining clear sight. The idea that the last meal you have before bed could significantly impact whether you retain sharp vision a decade from now is not a dramatic overstatement, but rather a scientifically grounded conclusion. This is directly related to the intricate repair processes your eyes undergo each night as you sleep. Most evenings, people tend to gravitate towards snacks that offer little to no nutritional value for their body's restorative functions. This can include items like potato chips, crackers, cookies, or a comforting bowl of ice cream enjoyed in front of the television. Following these indulgences, you drift off to sleep, entering a period of intense cellular repair that lasts for about 7 to 8 hours. During this crucial time, your eyes, which have endured 16 hours of relentless exposure to light, screen radiation, oxidative stress, and environmental toxins, finally have an opportunity to heal. However, when the body's internal repair crew arrives, the shelves are often bare of the essential materials needed for this vital work. There are no readily available antioxidants to neutralize the free radicals that have been actively damaging the delicate retina throughout the day. The necessary carotenoids, crucial for rebuilding the macular pigment that diminishes with blue light exposure, are absent. Furthermore, anti-inflammatory compounds, vital for calming the chronic low-grade inflammation that slowly erodes the delicate blood vessels supplying the photoreceptor cells, are lacking. The repair crew is left with nothing to work with, and consequently, your eyes are marginally worse off in the morning than they were the previous day. This decline is imperceptible on a daily basis, but when compounded over 365 nights a year, and then for a decade, it leads to a measurable, significant, and ultimately irreversible decline in visual function. Contrast this scenario with a proactive approach. Imagine that the final thing you consume before sleep is a carefully selected fruit, chosen for its specific nutrient profile and consumed at the optimal time to ensure a steady supply of essential molecules to your bloodstream. These molecules are precisely what your eyes require during their overnight repair window. This video delves into the science behind this nocturnal eye restoration, explaining the specific compounds your retina needs to heal itself while you sleep, and identifying the fruits that deliver these essential nutrients in their most concentrated and bioavailable forms. Some of these fruits will be familiar, while others may come as a surprise, and one, in particular, is so remarkably effective that it should arguably be the last item you eat every single night. Your eyes are arguably the most demanding sensory organs in your entire body. From the moment you awaken until you close them at night, they are engaged in processing an immense volume of information. Photons of light stream through your cornea, pass through the lens, and ultimately strike the approximately 130 million photoreceptor cells meticulously packed within the retina at the back of your eye. Each of these photoreceptor cells performs the remarkable feat of converting light energy into electrical signals, which are then transmitted to your brain via the optic nerve. This entire process, which appears effortless and instantaneous to you, is actually one of the most metabolically intensive activities your body undertakes. In fact, your retina consumes more oxygen per gram of tissue than any other organ, including your brain, heart, and kidneys, functioning as a veritable furnace of metabolic activity. Like any furnace, this intense activity generates waste products. Every single photon of light that impacts a photoreceptor initiates a chemical reaction that produces free radicals as a byproduct. Blue light, emitted in vast quantities by smartphones, computer screens, LED lighting, and even the sun, is particularly destructive due to the higher energy carried by its shorter wavelengths compared to other visible light. Each blue photon that hits your retina triggers a small but significant surge of oxidative stress. Over the course of a single day, trillions of photons bombard your retina, resulting in trillions of these micro-events of oxidative damage. The lipid-rich membranes of your photoreceptor cells sustain cumulative damage. Proteins within the retinal tissue become oxidized, leading to dysfunction. The delicate capillaries that nourish the retina are subjected to inflammatory stress. By the time you close your eyes at night, your retina is essentially a battlefield. The outer segments of your photoreceptor cells, which are the specialized portions responsible for capturing light, are so damaged that they require complete replacement. This is precisely what occurs during sleep. Your retina operates an extraordinary overnight maintenance cycle, representing one of the most remarkable repair processes in human biology. The retinal pigment epithelium, a single layer of cells situated directly behind the photoreceptors, actively engulfs the damaged tips of the photoreceptor outer segments. It then meticulously digests this damaged material, recycling the usable components and supplying fresh building blocks back to the photoreceptors, enabling them to regenerate their outer segments from the base. This process, known as outer segment renewal, takes place every single night of your life and is the reason you can wake up each morning with functional photoreceptors, despite the daily damage they endure. Without this nightly renewal, your photoreceptors would degenerate within weeks, leading to blindness. However, a critical point to understand is that outer segment renewal is not an automatic process that occurs regardless of external conditions. It requires specific nutrients to function optimally. The retinal pigment epithelial cells need antioxidants to effectively withstand the oxidative burst that occurs when they digest the damaged photoreceptor material. It is crucial to remember that this material is laden with oxidized lipids and free radicals. The act of engulfing it is akin to a firefighter entering a burning building without protective gear. They are likely to sustain burns. Similarly, without adequate antioxidants, the retinal pigment epithelial cells themselves become damaged by the very material they are tasked with clearing. The photoreceptors, in turn, require carotenoids to rebuild their macular pigment. This yellow-tinted protective layer serves as a filter for blue light and shields the underlying cells from further photo damage. This pigment is partially depleted each day by light exposure and necessitates replenishment during the night. Furthermore, the delicate blood vessels of the retina require anti-inflammatory compounds to counteract the vascular inflammation that accumulates throughout the day. Without these compounds, the inflammation persists overnight, gradually damaging the vessel walls and diminishing the blood flow that delivers vital oxygen and nutrients to the retina. Crucially, all of these restorative processes must occur within a specific time frame. The initial 4 to 5 hours of sleep, when your body is in its deepest restorative phase, is when retinal repair activity peaks. Therefore, the necessary nutrients must be circulating in your bloodstream before you enter this critical window. This underscores the strategic importance of consuming the right fruit 1 to 2 hours before sleep, as it will be digested and absorbed just as you enter the deep sleep phase, ensuring that the bioactive compounds reach peak blood concentrations precisely when your retina's repair machinery is operating at its highest capacity. To illustrate the sheer scale of this nightly repair operation, consider the following numbers. Each rod photoreceptor in your retina sheds approximately 80 to 90 discs from the tip of its outer segment each morning as daylight begins. These discs are flattened membrane structures that contain the crucial rhodopsin molecules. Each disc is packed with polyunsaturated fatty acids that have endured a full day of photon bombardment and free radical exposure, essentially making them spent components that need to be disposed of and replaced. With over 100 million rod photoreceptors in each eye, this equates to roughly 9 billion damaged disc membranes that must be phagocytosed, digested, and recycled by the retinal pigment epithelium every single day per eye. The sheer volume of material being processed is staggering, and the metabolic demands placed upon the retinal pigment epithelial cells are immense. This explains why these cells are particularly vulnerable to failure with age. They are engaged in one of the most intensive recycling operations in the entire body, every single night, for your entire life. When these cells receive adequate nutritional support, they can effectively keep pace with the demand. However, when they are nutritionally depleted, the cellular debris accumulates, lipofuscin builds up, and the foundation is laid for conditions like macular degeneration. The 5 fruits about to be discussed have been specifically chosen to support these cells during their most demanding hours. Each fruit provides a distinct class of compound that addresses a different facet of the overnight repair challenge. The timing of their consumption is not arbitrary. It represents a deliberate alignment of nutrient delivery with biological demand. The first fruit that should form the cornerstone of your nightly eye health regimen is the tart cherry. Its benefits extend far beyond its antioxidant content. Tart cherries possess a unique ability that fundamentally enhances the effectiveness of all other nighttime repair processes. Tart cherries, also known as Montmorency cherries or sour cherries, are one of the few significant natural food sources of melatonin, and not in trace amounts, but in physiologically meaningful quantities. Clinical studies have demonstrated their ability to increase blood melatonin levels and improve sleep parameters in human subjects. You might wonder about the relevance of melatonin, a hormone primarily associated with sleep, to your eyes. The answer is that it is profoundly important. Your retina does not merely respond to melatonin produced by your pineal gland. It also synthesizes its own melatonin locally. This locally produced retinal melatonin is synthesized by the photoreceptor cells themselves, as well as by cells within the retinal pigment epithelium. This localized melatonin acts as the master timing signal for the entire overnight repair cycle. It signals to the photoreceptors when to shed their damaged outer segments and instructs the retinal pigment epithelial cells when to commence the phagocytic cleanup process. It orchestrates the timing of outer segment renewal, ensuring that the shedding and regrowth occur in a precisely synchronized rhythm. When melatonin levels in the retina are robust, this timing is tight and highly efficient, with damaged segments shed at the appropriate time, cleaned up swiftly, and replaced with fresh material before the onset of the new day. Conversely, when melatonin levels are low, the timing becomes disorganized. Shedding may be delayed or incomplete, and the cleanup process falls behind. Undigested debris accumulates within the retinal pigment epithelium, forming deposits of a toxic substance known as lipofuscin. Lipofuscin accumulation is one of the earliest detectable changes associated with age-related macular degeneration. It represents cellular waste that the retinal pigment epithelium was unable to process and dispose of. Over time, lipofuscin-laden retinal pigment epithelial cells become dysfunctional and eventually die, leading to the demise of the overlying photoreceptors. This is the cellular basis of geographic atrophy, the advanced dry form of macular degeneration that results in permanent central vision loss. After the age of 60, melatonin production declines significantly, both from the pineal gland and locally within the retina. This decline directly impairs the timing and efficiency of the overnight repair cycle, accelerating the accumulation of lipofuscin and the progression of macular degeneration. Tart cherries provide an exogenous source of melatonin, supplementing your diminishing natural production. By consuming tart cherries before bed, you are reinforcing the critical melatonin signal that coordinates your retina's overnight maintenance, ensuring that the repair cycle runs on time and at its maximum efficiency. Melatonin is, however, only one piece of the tart cherry puzzle. Tart cherries are also exceptionally rich in anthocyanins, the deep red pigments belonging to the flavonoid family. The specific anthocyanin profile of tart cherries includes compounds like cyanidin 3-glucoside and cyanidin 3-rutinoside, which have demonstrated potent antioxidant activity within retinal tissue. These anthocyanins are capable of crossing the blood-retinal barrier and selectively accumulate in the retinal pigment epithelium, precisely where the overnight cleanup is most intense and where antioxidant protection is most critically needed. Once present, they effectively neutralize the free radicals generated during the phagocytosis of damaged photoreceptor segments, thereby protecting the retinal pigment epithelial cells from collateral oxidative damage. A clinical study published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that tart cherry juice significantly increased sleep duration by an average of 84 minutes in older adults. More time spent asleep translates directly to more time in the deep sleep phases where retinal repair is most active. This enhanced repair time leads to a more complete cleanup of daily damage, which in turn means a slower accumulation of the toxic debris that drives vision loss. Furthermore, tart cherries contain significant levels of quercetin, a flavonoid that inhibits the activity of vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF. The abnormal overproduction of VEGF is the primary driver of wet age-related macular degeneration, the form of the disease that causes rapid and severe vision loss due to the growth of leaky blood vessels beneath the retina. By suppressing this growth factor, quercetin from tart cherries helps prevent the transition from the slow-progressing dry form to the devastating wet form of the disease. To explain the practical implications of this, approximately 10–15% of individuals with dry macular degeneration eventually convert to the wet form. This conversion can occur suddenly and without warning. One day you might have stable, slowly declining vision, and the next, a new blood vessel bursts beneath your macula, leaking blood into the photoreceptor layer, resulting in a dark, distorted smudge in the center of your visual field that may never fully resolve. Current medical treatments for wet macular degeneration involve monthly or bi-monthly injections of anti-VEGF drugs directly into the eye. While these injections are effective at slowing disease progression, they are expensive, uncomfortable, and require indefinite continuation. Crucially, they are not a cure. They manage the condition by suppressing the same growth factor that quercetin naturally inhibits. While tart cherries cannot replace medical treatment for established wet macular degeneration, the concept of utilizing dietary quercetin to maintain VEGF levels in check before the conversion to wet disease occurs represents a preventive strategy with strong biological plausibility and supporting laboratory evidence. Research published in Investigative Ophthalmology and Visual Science demonstrated that quercetin significantly reduced VEGF expression in retinal pigment epithelial cells under hypoxic conditions, which are precisely the conditions that trigger the conversion to wet macular degeneration. Beyond these effects, there is a connection between tart cherries and inflammation that specifically benefits the retina. Tart cherries contain chlorogenic acid and neochlorogenic acid, two phenolic compounds that inhibit cyclooxygenase 1, KOX1, and cyclooxygenase 2, KOX2 enzymes. These are the same enzymes targeted by non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, like ibuprofen. The anti-inflammatory potency of compounds found in tart cherries has been favorably compared to low-dose ibuprofen in some studies, without the gastrointestinal side effects commonly associated with NSAIDs. Within the retina, COX-mediated inflammation contributes to the breakdown of the blood-retinal barrier, the migration of inflammatory cells into retinal tissue, and the progressive damage to the retinal pigment epithelium. By suppressing this inflammatory pathway, the phenolic acids in tart cherries help maintain the retinal environment in a state that promotes repair rather than further damage. Therefore, consuming tart cherries every single night is recommended as the foundation of a bedtime eye health routine. The most practical form is unsweetened tart cherry juice concentrate, which delivers a concentrated dose of melatonin and anthocyanins in a small volume. Mixing 1 teaspoon of concentrate into a small glass of water and drinking it 60 to 90 minutes before bed is an effective approach. If you prefer whole fruit, frozen tart cherries are widely available and can be thawed and eaten as an evening snack. While fresh tart cherries are seasonal, the frozen and juice forms are accessible year-round. Moving on to fruit number 2, bilberries. Bilberries are the European counterpart to blueberries, and while they may appear similar externally, they are fundamentally different internally in ways that are profoundly important for eye health. If you cut a blueberry in half, you will notice that its flesh is pale green or white, with the blue-purple pigment concentrated almost entirely in the skin. Now, cut a bilberry in half, and you will see that the flesh is deep purple all the way through, with every cell of the berry saturated with anthocyanins. This total flesh pigmentation means that bilberries contain 3 to 4 times more anthocyanins per berry than blueberries. Furthermore, the specific anthocyanin profile of bilberries is uniquely suited for eye health. The dominant anthocyanins in bilberries are delphinidin and cyanidin glycosides. These particular compounds have a well-documented affinity for ocular tissues. Studies employing radio-labeled anthocyanins have tracked their distribution throughout the body and consistently found that bilberry anthocyanins preferentially accumulate in the eyes, reaching concentrations higher than in most other tissues. Once within the eye, these anthocyanins perform a remarkable function. They accelerate the regeneration of rhodopsin, the visual pigment found in your rod photoreceptor cells, which is essential for vision in low-light conditions. Here's a simplified explanation of how rhodopsin works. When a photon of light strikes a rhodopsin molecule, its light-sensitive component, retinal, undergoes a conformational change in shape. This shape change triggers the electrical signal that your brain interprets as vision. However, this shape change also breaks apart the rhodopsin molecule. The retinal separates from the protein component called opsin, and the molecule must be reassembled before that photoreceptor can respond to light again. This reassembly process is known as rhodopsin regeneration, and it primarily occurs during the dark hours when your photoreceptors are at rest. The retinal pigment epithelium diligently recycles the spent retinal molecules and delivers them back to the photoreceptors, where they recombine with opsin to form fresh rhodopsin. As you age, the process of rhodopsin regeneration slows down and the recycling becomes less efficient. Consequently, you wake up in the morning with fewer fully loaded rhodopsin molecules, meaning your rod photoreceptors are not operating at their full capacity. The practical ramifications of this include declining night vision, difficulty adjusting to changes in lighting, and a general perception that everything appears dimmer than it used to. Bilberry anthocyanins have been shown in multiple studies to accelerate the rhodopsin regeneration cycle. They enhance the enzymatic processes within the retinal pigment epithelium responsible for recycling retinal, and they stabilize the rhodopsin molecule after it has been reassembled, making it more resistant to premature degradation. A study published in Alternative Medicine Review found that bilberry extract improved night visual acuity and reduced visual fatigue in subjects who consumed it regularly. These improvements were most pronounced in individuals with pre-existing visual decline, suggesting that bilberries offer particular benefits for the aging eye. Beyond rhodopsin regeneration, bilberry anthocyanins play a crucial role in protecting retinal capillaries from oxidative damage and enhancing microcirculation within the eye. They stimulate the production of nitric oxide in the endothelial cells of the retinal vasculature, promoting vasodilation and increased blood flow. Improved blood flow translates to a better delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the photoreceptors during the critical overnight repair window, as well as more efficient removal of metabolic waste. Bilberries also contain proanthocyanidins, which are large, complex polyphenol molecules that strengthen the structural integrity of blood vessel walls. The retinal capillaries are among the most delicate blood vessels in your body, and their deterioration is a hallmark of both diabetic retinopathy and age-related macular degeneration. By reinforcing these vessel walls, bilberry proanthocyanidins help prevent the leakage and hemorrhage that can lead to sudden and severe vision loss. Fresh bilberries are not widely available outside of Northern Europe, but bilberry supplements, powders, and extracts are readily accessible online and in health food stores. For your nightly eye health routine, consider mixing 1 to 2 tablespoons of bilberry powder into your tart cherry juice, creating a concentrated eye repair drink that synergizes the melatonin-driven timing benefits of tart cherries with the rhodopsin regeneration and vascular protection offered by bilberries. It is important to dedicate a moment more to the vascular dimension of bilberries, as it is critically important for anyone over 60, and especially for individuals with blood sugar concerns. The retinal vasculature is one of the first vascular beds in the body to exhibit damage from elevated blood sugar levels. The tiny capillaries feeding the retina have walls that are only 1 cell thick, making them extraordinarily fragile and acutely sensitive to the oxidative and glycation damage that elevated glucose inflicts. When these capillaries are damaged, they can develop microaneurysms. tiny balloon-like outpouchings that can rupture and leak blood into the retinal tissue. They can also develop areas of capillary closure, where the vessel shuts down entirely, leaving the retinal tissue it was supplying without adequate blood supply. This is the characteristic progression of diabetic retinopathy. However, you do not need a formal diabetes diagnosis to experience this damage. Research has indicated that blood sugar levels within the high normal range, significantly below the diabetic threshold, can cause measurable damage to retinal capillaries over decades. Many individuals over 60 may have some degree of retinal microvascular damage without even realizing it. Bilberry proanthocyanidins specifically target this microvascular damage by strengthening the basement membrane of the capillaries, which serves as the structural scaffold maintaining vessel integrity. They reduce capillary permeability, thereby preventing the leakage of blood and plasma proteins into the retinal tissue. Furthermore, they improve the deformability of red blood cells, enabling them to navigate more easily through the narrowest capillaries and deliver oxygen to retinal tissue that might otherwise be underperfused. A clinical study published in Arzneimittelforschung found that bilberry extract significantly improved retinal microcirculation and reduced signs of retinal vascular damage in patients with early-stage retinopathy. These improvements were objectively measurable on fundoscopic examination, meaning that ophthalmologists could literally observe the blood vessels improving when examining the patient's eyes. This vascular repair process occurs most effectively during sleep when the metabolic demands on the retina are lowest, allowing the repair mechanisms to focus on structural maintenance rather than immediate functional support. Consuming bilberries before bed ensures that the proanthocyanidins are circulating at peak concentrations during this critical vascular repair window. Fruit number 3 is the kiwi fruit. This fruit often surprises people when it is recommended for eye health. Unlike berries, kiwi does not possess a dramatic color, nor does it have centuries of traditional use for vision enhancement. However, the scientific evidence supporting kiwi fruit's benefits for eye health is compelling, operating through mechanisms entirely distinct from the anthocyanin-based advantages of tart cherries and bilberries. Kiwi fruit stands out as one of the most nutrient-dense fruits on the planet on a per-calorie basis. A single medium kiwi provides over 100% of the recommended daily intake of vitamin C. Vitamin C is not merely a general antioxidant for your eyes. It plays specific, critical roles within the retina that make it indispensable for overnight repair. The aqueous humor, the clear fluid that fills the front chamber of your eye, contains the highest concentration of vitamin C of any fluid in the human body, being approximately 20 to 30 times more concentrated than blood plasma levels. Your eye deliberately concentrates vitamin C to this extraordinary degree because it utilizes it as its primary water-soluble antioxidant defense. Throughout the day, as light passes through the aqueous humor and strikes the lens, free radicals are generated. Vitamin C effectively neutralizes these free radicals before they can damage the crystalline proteins of the lens. When crystalline proteins become oxidized, they aggregate and become opaque, which is the biochemical basis of cataract formation. Adequate vitamin C levels in the aqueous humor are therefore one of the most significant protective factors against cataracts. The Nurses' Health Study, one of the largest and longest-running nutritional studies ever conducted, found that women who consumed vitamin C from food sources for 10 or more years exhibited a significantly lower risk of developing cataracts compared to those with lower intakes. This protective effect was specifically linked to long-term, consistent dietary intake rather than short-term supplementation, underscoring the importance of making vitamin C-rich foods a daily habit. However, vitamin C performs another crucial function in the eye that is vital for overnight repair. It is an essential cofactor for the synthesis of collagen. The connective tissue structures of the eye, including the sclera, cornea, and the blood vessel walls of the retinal vasculature, are all dependent on collagen. Collagen synthesis occurs most actively during sleep, when growth hormone levels peak and tissue repair is at its maximum. Without sufficient vitamin C, collagen synthesis is impaired, and the structural integrity of these ocular tissues gradually deteriorates. What makes kiwi particularly interesting as a bedtime fruit is its documented effect on sleep quality.